It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. We've got a really special episode of Burn the Boats this week, but a little context first. For years, Republican politicians have been on a crusade attacking the U.S. military for caring about diversity within the ranks. Ted Cruz went so far as to mock one of our own recruiting ads while pointing to a Russian propaganda piece as an example of what our military should look like. It's only going to get worse now that the Republicans have a majority in the House and can stage hearings on whatever scandal they decide to invent. I thought it would be a good time to air this interview with Brett Jones, who, more than just about anybody I know, exposes the hypocrisy of people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who talk and tweet incessantly about martial virtues without ever having actually lifted a finger to defend this country. Brett Jones, on the other hand, spent a career on the front lines. He is the first openly gay Navy SEAL and was driven out of the teams during the era of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, not by his fellow SEALs, but by the ignorance of politicians who did not understand that our military is stronger because of its diversity, not in spite of it. I hope you'll be as inspired by Brett's story as I am. Thanks for watching. I'm Ken Harbaugh.
What could possibly go wrong?
This is Burn the Boats, a show about making tough calls in tough times. America today faces a critical test. Our democracy is under threat. But good people are rising to the challenge. Now is the time to go all in. Now we burn the boats. My guest today is Brett Jones, who was the first openly gay Navy SEAL. He served during Don't Ask, Don't Tell and left the SEAL teams after being outed. He continued to serve in the CIA, but was the victim of vicious harassment there. Brett's now married, living in Alabama with his husband and their son. Brett, it is such an honor to speak with you. Welcome to Burn the Boats.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Your book came out a few years ago, but I feel like your story has such relevance today in this political era where we're experiencing this weird kind of hyper-masculinity that's become a defining feature of the right. Now, you've been the victim, even as one of our nation's elite warriors, of these twisted notions of masculinity. And even though you rose above it, with everything you've seen in the years since, especially living in Alabama, where I've lived as well, do you think things are getting better or worse?
I think if you take history as sort of an example, I say that I do believe that things are getting better. I also believe that it's one of those mountains that's impossible to reach the top, but is very important that you keep climbing, right? Like if you look at civil rights or any other group of people that have been marginalized in history, the way that you are the true summit of it is just not giving up that climb. I feel that the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was awesome, and being able to be married, it was awesome. It was particularly a wonderful day for me, and a wonderful event that happened for me and my family. But it's not the end, right? Like there's still always work to do. The same with civil rights. It's still you can't give up on it, or we're not at the top of the mountain where everyone is treated equally and harmoniously and all that. You still have to keep challenging yourself as a person and as a community and as a state, as a nation.
It is funny how progress happens, though. At times it seems like, we can't even see the top of that mountain. And then seemingly overnight, granted with a ton of work by committed advocates and a ton of sacrifice by a lot of people, but what seems like overnight there's a mental shift. And something that would have seemed unthinkable to my parents' generation, legalized gay marriage, my kids just take for granted. How do you think about that and the way things seem to shift all at once after so much effort?
I gotta say, I remember there were times in my life, the majority of my life, where I never thought in my lifetime that I would be able to be married to a guy that I love. Right? I just didn't. I wouldn't be able to have a family. I wouldn't. It would have to be this very cloaked and secret. This very whatever. And I remember that, the momentum building up to that Supreme Court ruling, and there's this part of you that is so afraid of what might not happen after it's like being told that you just won the lottery, but and so you're just hoping and praying that ruling comes back. And I just remember what a feeling that was. And crazy, I was like, I had deployed a few months before. So I basically, my deployment schedule was I would deploy for 2 or 3 months and then come back for 2 or 3 months, deploy for 2 or 3 months, come back for 2. And my husband and I, at the time, I was doing stuff that was really, really dangerous. And we thought that if I got killed, which was a pretty good, let's just be honest here, the odds aren't in my favor there. And but we were worried that the insurance wouldn't cover my family. And we had this I think it was like $250,000 life insurance policy through the it's your basic thing that the military or the agency offered. And I was terrified that they wouldn't get it because we weren't married, even though everywhere else, legally we were together, just not married. And I remember it was like 3 days before I left, me and him drove up to Illinois to get married in this little town called, I want to say it's Evansville, Illinois. So it was right on the border there. So we just crossed into the border, went straight to the magistrate and got married. And so that if something did happen to me, then there was no issues with and then come to find out just, a few months later, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of it. And good Lord, what an amazing feeling that was.
Well, that was the Obergefell decision. And what's striking to me hearing your story is that we had Jim Obergefell on the show a while back.
Oh, really?
And we did. And
I met him at a gala once.
No kidding. That's awesome. The prompt, and it's heartbreaking just talking about it, the forcing issue for that case was the fact that he married his husband out of state, out of Ohio, because his husband was terminally ill, and they wanted to sanctify their relationship in the eyes of the law. And when they landed back in Ohio, they realized that Ohio didn't care. Ohio didn't care that their marriage was sanctified in another state, but it didn't matter in Ohio. And Jim was terrified that, when this actually happened, he wasn't listed on the death certificate. And his husband said, fight this. And that resulted in Obergefell making it before the Supreme Court and making legalized gay marriage the law of the land, not just a state by state thing. But in your case, I mean, that was very real possibility as well. You were doing Navy SEAL missions, and
I was with the CIA at the time, but yeah.
Oh, you were with the CIA at the time. Probably even more dangerous if there was one thing that could be more dangerous than being a Navy SEAL. What's also interesting about your perspective on all this is that the tropes are pretty conservative. I mean, you're a Navy SEAL, you're living in Alabama. If someone had to just write the book cover, it would look pretty conservative, right?
Yeah. I don't I don't know how all this happened actually, but I fell in love with the guy that lives in Alabama and his family, and it was that's how it happened. as far as conservative and liberal, I really try to, especially as the older I get, I just really try to focus on people and not these group, because it's real easy like to say like, oh, the right, they're trying to oppress us, and the left is whatever. I try to sort of like separate that and focus really on people. And if if somebody has a problem with me being in a relationship, married and with a family and all that, I'd give it that look of, well, is this person, they're a person, and so I that's basically how I try to look at it. And a lot of people don't understand, and that's okay. I'm not out here to try and make everyone understand something. All I can do is live my best life, and that's about the most I can do, really.
I love that.
Yeah, sorry.
No. I was going to say, I love that focus on people, and it reminds me of a very old YouTube video of yours that we dug up, where you're talking about your feelings after Obergefell, and you made some comment about the case of the bakery that refused to serve a gay couple, and there's this quote in particular, which I don't know if I can get it on a T-shirt. I will. You said, I wondered if a gay couple came to Jesus and asked him to make them a chair for their wedding, you know what Jesus would do? My guess is that not only would he have made them one chair, he probably would have made them two, and then he would have bedazzled it and put streamers all over it, and gold and frankincense and myrrh and whatever.
Yeah, I remember that. No, I do remember that.
To show it as a testament of his love for them, regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right, but this is a political show, so I'm going to hold you to the fire a little bit. You have to acknowledge that most of that hate, that prejudice, is coming from the right, and they want to make it law.
Yeah, I do recognize that, and I also recognize that there are people who are working hard on both sides to keep this as an equal of a land as possible. And here's the thing: is I it's real easy to stereotype a group of people. Like, that's our brains work that way, right? And it's easier to categorize things and file them away as, oh, that's gay, or oh, that's far right, or oh, that's far left, or whatever, right? It's just very easy to do that. And when we do that, we lose sight of people. And I try, even like, a real good example of this is like the Roy Moore thing that happened here in my home state of Alabama. And as frustrating and as angry as I would be about, his what seemed and felt like just hate towards people like me and my family, and him being in such a prestigious position, it was a very frustrating thing, and it would be very easy for me to say awful things about this man, and given my experiences in my life. But here's the thing: is what compassion would that? He's still a human being. He's he grew. I don't know his whole story. I don't know his whole life. I don't know. I just know what I'm seeing and what's happening. And I try during that time to really focus on just being me, me, and still caring about people regardless of what they might believe.
Right.
Yeah.
That is separate from electing those people to powerful positions, though, right? We can have.
Oh, I didn't vote for them.
What does it say though, that 47% of Alabamians, and I know this number because, I spent my formative years in Alabama, and I couldn't believe what was happening. Actually, I could believe what was happening, and that's why I'm putting the question to you. What does it say about deep red parts of this country that nearly a majority will support someone with a record like Roy Moore's?
So you have to really look at the history of Alabama to really understand the people. My husband has been very he's a Civil War enthusiast, and so he's really helped me understand, because I came here, when I first came here, I didn't, it was a culture shock to me. And I think, one of the best lessons that I've learned living in this state is that people may have beliefs, and regardless of where these beliefs come from, whether it was something that has been generationally taught, over the years, or if they have these, prejudices or biases or whatever it is that you may not agree with. At the end of the day, they're still people, and they still have the power to influence other people. And the only way that I know how to combat that is to try and be the best version of myself that I can be. And it all goes back to that compassion, right? And I'll be honest with you, the people of Alabama have been, for the most part, have been absolutely 100% amazing to me and my husband. And some of them don't agree with the Supreme Court's ruling or our relationship, or and I can't control that. I can't change somebody else's thought, and I just focus on the things that I can control. And it has always seemed to suit me pretty well, and that's how I react to people doing things that I might not agree with.
But you've talked about the difference between living in a relatively big city by Alabama standards, Huntsville, with tons of academic institutions and high-tech industry, and living in rural Alabama.
Yeah,
you're in an island right now, and again,
well,
not saying
so
that
yeah, no, I know you're absolutely right. I'm in this little blue dot floating in the middle of a sea of red, right? So, but here's the thing: is like I actually live in a town just outside of Huntsville, and small town, and our son, we went to baseball games growing up, and it was we got that where we had to sit by ourselves, where we had to. Like it was really bad there for until you just realize that I can only do what I can do, right? I try to it obviously makes me angry when your son comes back or is like, why are none of the other parents sitting near these two that they can catch it or something. I mean, there's these difficult talks that you have to have, and there's these difficult things that you have to do that shouldn't be that way. I feel that I should be able to be able to kiss my husband whenever I want to. I should be able to hold his hand if I want to, and not make other people uncomfortable. And but that's not the world I live in. That's not the world that I'm here. And the only way that I know truly how to not get very angry and frustrated is to realize that I can't control other people. I can try to be a good example. I can try to make positive videos. I can try to make write things that will help people understand, because that's really what it all boils down to, right? It's like people just don't understand. I don't know what it's like to be transgender. I have no idea what that's like. But people who I have respected have, tried to help me understand that and make it to where I can relate to that. And it has opened my eyes. Even Christianity. I grew up in a very religious environment that really felt like it was used as a weapon against me for years and years. And I had this resentment against people who were that did that were that religious, and I had I had to come to this place where I could be like, look, it's I can't control that. I have to let that go, and know that otherwise I'm just going to build up resentment and hate, and I'm going to have to carry that around with me, and I don't want to be carrying other people's shit, right? And and so letting go of that, and then once I was able to do that, I realized that I could have my own relationship with a God of my understanding, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of that. And again, I sound like a broken record, but just going back to the compassion part, right? Like, I know, because I lived it. I was in an environment where you grew up and you had to be a certain way. And those things that are instilled in you at a very young age are very difficult to break away from. And growing up in a very religious environment as a gay person, man, it's hard. It's really difficult. And then, as you start to come into your own, you feel like you're hurting, this God that your parents had told you about, and that you're hurting them. And then, and then all of a sudden the self-loathing comes in, and I can't change this, and I can't change the way I think. And, it's just this very vicious cycle. And, I understand how easy it is to try to not understand another person, right? Like, it's easy to just categorize it as, oh, that's a trans person. I don't care about them. Filed away in that, thing. And I can teach my kids that, because it's really easy. It's just that, trans people bad, gay people bad, or whatever, right? And, the more difficult thing would be to, let me try and understand this. Let me try and understand why this person is this way. Let me try and understand what that person must be, their life must be like, right? Like, same with mental illness, man. Like, that is so much stigma. As a cop, I see it all the time. There's so much stigma around it, and I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just saying, like, it's a category of people that people just crazy, right? They label it crazy and they file it away. And it's like, no, actually, if you really take the time to try and understand what's going on, it's not what you think. And when I come across people that resent me just because of me being gay or whatever, I think my first thought is like, oh man, like, I feel bad for them, because I feel like maybe they weren't given the opportunities, or they weren't taught to try to understand other people. And that's sort of where I guess I lie at it.
It feels like there's a resurgence of that of late, because it has become such an effective political tool on the right. You brought up the attacks on transgender people. The idea that, if we can rally our base by othering people we don't understand, we can win elections in the heart of Alabama. Surely you're seeing that around you.
Well, again, man, like, if you go and look at history, right? Like, some of Alabama's governors, they were elected. Well, one in particular was elected because he was, he wasn't afraid to drop the N-word. And that was, a rallying point around that. I think, again, I think a lot of it is education, for sure, right? Being able to grow up in an environment where you can learn about things in a freer space, is obviously helpful. I think at the end of the day, if you think about anything, whether it's political or just personal relationships or whatever, if you're hurting somebody, right? If your beliefs are actively hurting somebody, then and it's not in a way to help them grow or become a better person, but really hurting them, then you're fucked up, man. Like you're hurting somebody, right? And that's not a way to live your life.
Thanks for watching, everyone. We've got a quick message from our show sponsor, but first, I've got a favor to ask. Growing a show like Burn the Boats depends on you. There was a time when thoughtful interviews with interesting guests could stand on their own, but these days, the algorithm is everything. The recommendations that show up in the feeds of YouTube viewers and podcast listeners depend on the reviews that shows like this get. So please give us a thumbs up, follow this channel, and if you're up for it, please consider clicking on the link to the podcast page and leaving us a 5-star review. It makes a huge difference. Thanks. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. The last few years, especially, have been a wild ride filled with my own personal self-realizations and growth. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Because talking and working through things in our past allows us to deal with experiences that may be having a major impact on the way we go about our days. Therapy is an incredibly helpful tool for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. Over time, we can learn to become the best versions of ourselves. And look, therapy is for everyone, not just people who have experienced major trauma, because what you're working through matters. Never discount that. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/boats today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/boats. I feel like that the hurting of people has become a part of our politics lately in a way that it wasn't before. Cruelty seems to be the point when former President Trump mocks a disabled person or talks about roughing suspects up, putting them into police cars. Those lines get the loudest applause at his rallies. Something seems to have gone off the rails in a party that celebrates the cruelty for cruelty's sake. How do you react?
Well, obviously, I don't like that, right? I don't. It's no secret. I didn't vote for Trump, and and he is certainly not a statesman. And I think that, I think a poor example of how we should treat other people, for sure. I'm not going to get into the politics of what he believes and whatnot, but here's the thing, man, is people are people, and it's really, really fucking easy to take people and just our brains, I feel like, are probably triggered more towards that negative. Like, it's really easy to dislike somebody. It's really easy to hate somebody. It requires no work, and it weighs on you, and then it's a cancer. It grows, and then it morphs into other things. It's really hard to understand and try to relate and show compassion to people. That's fucking work. That's really fucking hard work. And when I see people like that, I'm like, I guess that I don't think they're ready for that kind of work yet.
Yeah. There's this great Brene Brown quote. She says, "It's hard to hate up close." And I have to believe that one of the defining features of those islands of blue and seas of red, as you described Huntsville, is the fact that there is more diversity. There is more education. You're surrounded by people who challenge your preconceptions. Does that hold?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that I love about, I mean, I feel like diversity is one of those things that just adds fucking color to the world. And because if I grew up in an environment where beliefs were supposed to be the same, right? And those beliefs and those ideals and those ideas became very boring to me, and not like it just felt stale. And as I got older and was introduced to different types of people and different views and religions, and even though I might not agree with some of them, it brought color into my life. And I believe that there's a place and a conversation here for everyone, right? And yeah, I didn't vote for Trump.
What do you make of his? I mean, it's almost like he's impersonating Mussolini or the strongmen of eras past, in the way he carries himself, in the way he bullies those who stand up to him. And I'm asking you as a Navy SEAL. We don't get Navy SEALs on this show all the time, but you have to have a pretty insightful perspective on toxic masculinity, having been at the tip of the spear of America's national defense.
Yeah, so I think you said it right there. I watched the whole like every American did, and I was like, wow, man, this guy is the definition of a bully. And I think the thing that fuels a bully is when it works, right? When you do something and you use shame or insults or whatever the case is as a tool to get what you want, and then it works. It's like, well, damn, that just adds to that ego or that that bullies live off of, right?
Well, the bullying and these weird demonstrations of virility, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat would call them, didn't just work for Trump. They infected the entire Republican Party. I mean, you have people like Josh Hawley, who I don't think anyone should take manliness lessons from. He's the guy who fist pumped the insurrectionists on January 6th, right? He's writing a book about how to be a real man. I mean, this has become a trope on the right. How does something like this happen, and how do those of us who see through it call it out?
Well, I think just like that, right? Like you do obviously see through it, and you are calling it out, right? And that's what it is. Yeah, it's very easy to fall into something. It's very easy to get angry at something that you don't understand. That's human nature, right? Like, oh, I don't understand that person over there because they mow their yard on Tuesdays instead of the weekends. Who the fuck does that? What is that? I don't understand that. They're a shitty neighbor. Like, it's just easy to categorize things you don't understand into I don't like category. And then when you find other people that really put that on a billboard, it's like, oh man, look, this person doesn't like that guy over there either because he mows his yard on Tuesdays. Fuck, let's hang out more. Let's grab a beer together or whatever, right? Like, it's this it grows.
And pretty soon you get the Oath Keepers, right?
Yeah. And then you got the lynch mob out there hanging the guy up on the side of the street because he didn't mow his yard on a Tuesday.
So many of our fellow vets, and you work with a lot of law enforcement, this applies to them as well. get drawn into this. What is happening there? Why is there such an attraction for our buddies who served? Why are so many in the law enforcement community drawn to these kinds of movements as well? I mean, January 6th jumps to the top of my mind as an example of a movement that had way too many law enforcement officers, way too many vets at the vanguard, and it just scares the heck out of me.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't think it's fair to categorize all of veterans and police officers into a small group of people that went and did something awful.
Fair enough, yeah. But, even one is too many, and vets and LEO were disproportionately represented at the Capitol that day.
Yeah, but there were also some that really, stood out too.
Yes.
That helped, keep those people out and
sure
keep our elected officials safe. And I think, I don't honestly feel that it's a disproportionate amount. I'm a police officer here in Alabama, and I can tell you that the people that I've worked with, different municipalities, counties, you name it. I've worked with all different types of police officers from all over the state. And my overall impression of them is, wow, these people really, really care about their communities and, their laws and helping people. There's been a big shift in law enforcement in general that I've seen where, you had this sort of ultra masculine sort of, it's this way or the highway or whatever, to a very much more focus on the people, focus on the situation, and how can I actually really help this situation and not, escalate or whatever. And that, like, those officers, have been, the most impressionable people that I've been impressed by have been police officers here in the state of Alabama, that don't see race, that don't see, political views or whatever. They go into these situations with an open mind and an open heart and try to help and de-escalate situations.
Yeah, we had a sheriff from Oakland on the show, who talked about the importance of that, the importance of empathy in policing, and unfortunately, that's not what the body cams catch enough of. I think what we see far too much of is the old school approach, the my way or the highway approach, and
so
that does incredible damage to the profession. Yeah, go ahead.
I see a lot of these body cams too, and my very first thing that when I look at a body cam video is one, is am I seeing the whole thing? Am I seeing the whole story? Like, because that's important. A whole story is important, and not just a 20-second clip from a whole story. And then two is there are bad apples, right? Like, that's in any profession. There's always going to be people that aren't at their best in a day, and or are at their worst for sure. And and those people need to be handled and dealt with accordingly. There was another thing I wanted to talk about with the body cams and those.
Well, I think, at least in my world, we see the worst of the worst. And
so here's the thing with that, right? Like, you get you're just getting the worst of the worst, right? And that's, you know, there's so many times, like I can't tell you with my department alone where someone has made a complaint like, oh, this officer did this and this and this, and then they pull up the body cam and it's like, oh wow, no, that was not what happened, and this is what happened. And there's a lot of really amazing and awesome and beautiful things that these police officers are doing on a daily basis that you don't see, right? Because their policy isn't to post a video about it. And even if you did, like, you know, how many people are going to watch a cop doing his job? Like, you know, nobody cares about that. They only care about that when it's that they need them to help them with their, you know, in their moment. And but there are those ones that you know are doing, you know, that make everyone else look bad, for sure. And it's a battle that we, you know, have to fight and rise above and you know.
Well, you give me hope, Brett, and I know you do a lot of teaching in that world. How do your colleagues feel about the fact that you're a gay ex-Navy SEAL? I mean, 20 years ago, you were forced out of the Navy for being who you are. How do your buddies and neighbors feel about that now?
So honestly, I haven't had in my law enforcement career here, which isn't very long. You know, I've only been a cop for 3 years here, and now I'm just part-time. But I've had nothing but like the most positive experiences. My police department is this very small town, and you would if you were to paint a stereotypical Alabama town, that would be it. And those people have been absolutely wonderful. In fact, we're going to be moving out there. We love those people so much, and yeah, like it has been nothing but a positive learning experience for me, and the people that I have worked with have been absolutely nothing but great. So I'm new, right? Still relatively new, and these people take time out of their, you know, what they're doing to help me to become a better police officer and to help me understand things that I don't understand. Like, we'll go on calls sometimes where there'll be, you know, somebody with a mental illness, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this, you know, like, this is new. How do I handle this person and this and that, and watching the way that these people deal with them and with a empathetic, you know, in an empathetic way is just, and it helps build the community. Like, you see the community starts to rally around their officers when the officers are actively out there serving the community, and it's just such a beautiful thing to be a part of and to do, and that has absolutely everything to do with other people, the other police officers that have mentored me and continue to mentor me.
Well, Brett, this has been incredibly enlightening. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.MeidasTouch.com.